Welcome to this episode of Coffee with Closers. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Kyle Handy, and he has started out his real estate business from the bottom, just like you and I. He went on to build a real estate brokerage, then closed it, and now has 572 agents in his organization at eXp. But Kyle is going to basically go over exactly what he would do if he was going to start his real estate business over again from square one. So let's dive right into the video. Welcome to Coffee with Closers. In this series, we interview top real estate producers that are out there making big things happen in the real estate industry. That way you can learn from their failures and their big wins so you can start winning more in your real estate business. So Kyle, welcome to the show. This is another episode of Coffee with Closers, and I want to dive into this important question. So this is something that many new agents ask, and what would you do if you had to start your business all over again and kind of start from ground zero and build it up to where you're at now?
Yeah, well, first off, Chris, thank you so much for having me here. I definitely love all that you're doing for your audience, and I know you're adding a lot of value to them. And so it's just an honor of mine to be on your channel and be able to, add in my 2 cents as far as my journey. But yeah, that question's a great question, because I will say, I've been in the business 13 years now, and I've learned everything I've learned today by making a whole lot of mistakes. And so there's certainly, there's quite a lot of ways to do things right, but there's even more ways to do things wrong. And so certainly I think one of the biggest things that I would say I struggled with, as a new agent that I've learned over time not to do is, number one, I think, especially when you're just getting started, you've got to really simplify your business and just focus on one main thing. And, I think a lot of agents, we get so caught up in the beginning and overwhelmed, quite frankly, where we're just going to training just to go to training. We're learning all these different things. Even after you get your license, it's okay, now you got your license and you're just going to training to stay busy. And every time you go to these different trainings, you're learning all these different things that kind of not contradict, but they just don't go hand in hand with stuff. It's okay, well, I need to do expireds. I need to do for sale by owners, but then I need to do open houses, and then I need to go door knocking, and then I want to do YouTube, and then I want to do social media and my sphere of influence. And people are well, you don't, when you try and do all of that stuff at once, you don't do anything well. And that was definitely a mistake that I made, and I would have grown much faster if I would have just honed in on one of those things, became a master at it. In every training that I went to was only training related around that particular aspect. And so, because it's not a bad thing to hear different perspectives. Let's say that, I wanted to learn how to, cold call or something and do expireds. Well, I'm going to go listen to, a couple different YouTubers. I'm going to probably, talk to maybe a couple agents in my market that are doing it, and hearing different perspectives around the same thing is okay. But it's when you're trying to do all these different things, that's when it's just you don't ever get started doing anything. And I think that's the biggest thing that would separate, agents that have success early on from the ones that kind of struggle, is that the ones that struggle are just trying to do too much. So it's not from a lack of effort or trying, they are trying to do things. It's just they're trying to do too much. And that causes a big issue. So
It does. And especially now with the market being so competitive, everybody's kind of fighting over the same business, the same listing. So if you have 1,000 false starts, at a lot of different things, and you never master anything, it'd be a real tough go. So when you first started out, that's kind of what you did. You tried to, take all these different avenues and nothing was really panning out.
Yeah, big time. I threw Google ads into the mix when I was first starting. I was doing Google ads. Of course, I was working my sphere of influence. I've lived in San Antonio my whole life, so I knew that was a worthwhile thing to do. I was doing open houses sporadically, once or twice a month. I even, ventured with Red X and doing, expireds for sale by owners, that type of stuff. And nothing was just clicking. It was I was spending money on Google ads and I was starting to get leads from it. But because then I was losing focus because I was calling expireds, I get people mixed up. I was wasting money over on one side of my business because I'm spending money on ads, but then I'm not really following up with them the way that I should. I wasn't building systems around that particular way that I should have. And yeah, so quite honestly, it was I think it probably took me, I would say, a solid, 2 years or so before I really learned the hard lesson of okay, hey, I need to focus. I basically kind of condensed my business in. And when I did that, and I basically decided, okay, at this point, I'm going to just do Google ads. And that was literally my, go-to. for many years after was Google pay-per-click. I learned how to run the campaigns myself. I set up all of the, the funnels, like the follow up and everything like that for it. Speed to lead, every single lead I called within 5 minutes, or if I didn't, I had I had somebody there that could. And I just really like went all in on that strategy. And that took me from, being like a couple $1 million producer to, doing over 10 to $15 million within about a year, once I got real solid on that. And then once you get solid on something and you know that you've got the systems in place, and now you find yourself having more bandwidth to do other things, well, now you can start incorporating other things that are like a synergy to that lead source. But in the beginning, you should definitely find like something that works, follow somebody that's actually working a system or a proven process, and follow that to a T. Like, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Don't try and like, do your own thing in the beginning. It's not a bad thing to like follow somebody's lead or do something that somebody's already done. And then once you know it good enough, you can start tweaking it and making it your own. But I think so often, we're entrepreneurs, we get into real estate, so we don't have a boss, we don't want to be told what to do. And so we end up like trying to do everything ourselves. And we end up getting in our own way most of the time. And we end up growing a lot slower, trying to do it our own way, than like doing it the way that works, and then kind of doing it our own way after we know what works.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's a big jump. I mean, just when, you started to focus on one thing, you went from a couple million in production all the way up to 10 to 15 million. That's a big, income increase.
Yeah.
So if you were to do it today, would you still go down that same road of pay-per-click, or would you go down a different road?
Yeah, well, no, I think today, knowing what I know about YouTube, man, I would not, I think that would be the route I'd go, quite honestly, would be YouTube.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got a couple agents now that are on my team that, I've helped them kind of grow their YouTube channels, and they've grown like, one agent in my group, he's been about a $7 to $8 million producer for 6, 7, 8 years now. And literally he started his YouTube channel last year. He's got about 30 videos on his channel so far. And already last year, the first year having his YouTube channel, he went from 8 million to doing $34 million in volume last year.
Wow.
And then this year, I just talked to him like a week ago, and he's already done 16 million closed and pending this year. So he's already halfway through. He's already done half of what he did last year, 2.5 months into this year. And, so he's only grown. So now his biggest thing is his growing pains. He's having to learn how to grow a team, how to, lead a team and build systems, like scalable systems. So that's a whole different problem, a whole different ball game than like just trying to get the leads in the beginning.
Yeah.
Once I've seen the power of YouTube and the fact that like, you don't even have to really spend money for these leads, and I used to say like, oh, it's going to take, 50 or 75 or 100 videos before you get any traction. But at 30 videos in, to his channel, he's got like I think his most popular videos got like 75,000 views on it already. I'm like, oh
wow. Wow.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah.
That is huge. Those are big numbers. Those are really big numbers. And then the best thing about it is, with YouTube, it just scales because, your last video, SEO picks it up in the algorithm, and then somebody else finds another one of your videos, and then they watch more of your stuff. And before you know it, they know you don't even know them, and they're calling you saying, hey, I'd like to buy or sell a house with you.
That's the 100% true. That's the part that I love most, even more than the business going is, getting bigger, is the fact that like when you do get the business, it's so easy. Like it's easier because, it's funny because you're on YouTube or whatever, like, your clients, your potential clients almost look at you like you're a celebrity or so. It's like, like, hey, I'm just on YouTube. Like I'm not on like HGTV or anything, it's just, but they like, you get on a Zoom call and they're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't think that I'd actually get to talk. It's a way different experience than when you like call a pay-per-click Google lead and they're like, they don't want you calling them, like most of them, some of them
exactly
do, but most of them don't. And so it's a totally different experience as the realtor getting to work with people who want to work with you versus ones that you feel like you're bothering them or interrupting them or whatever.
That's true. And what do you think the biggest thing, because I know it's such a powerful thing, do you think it's because agents don't understand it, or do you think it's because they're just uncomfortable being on video?
Yeah, well, I think it's just like anything. It's really hard to kind of get started on stuff a lot of times, especially if like you don't know what your business plan is if you're like that agent where I'm telling you, where it's like, you got so much going on, you're like, well, I'm already doing this, I'm already doing this, I'm already doing that. Then the common excuses that I hear is like, well, I'm busy, I've got other stuff that I'm doing or whatever. And so then it's a priority issue. Well, like, do you not see that, how important this could be for your business? Because if you believed that this was going to impact your business that big, you would stop doing everything else to go after and do it. So I think a lot of times it could be a priority issue. But then, like, obviously, I think because the mechanics of it are pretty simple. I mean, yeah, at the beginning, when you first start doing your YouTube videos, they're probably going to stink. Like my first videos stunk, like everybody's first videos are not the best videos. Like that's just, it is. And you have to be willing to put yourself out there, and maybe it's not like your best thing, but like just, creating the video. I think you have to put your ego aside and just be like, hey, I'm just going to put out there helpful content that is the best that I can create today. Maybe someday I'll be able to make better content and replace it, but I'm going to put out there helpful stuff, and just go to town, right? And then like, speak what you know. So like if like a lot of these real estate channels, you're talking about your city or something, like the pros and cons of moving to San Antonio, Texas, the pros and cons, or the 5 things you need to know about moving, to San Antonio. It's like, just talk about it. Like if you're from your city, or even if you're not, go watch a couple other videos or read a couple other things, or take a poll from your Facebook or your Instagram and ask people, what do they like about your city? Find it out, and then you can go speak about it, right? Like it's not that difficult. And then, but people will get caught up and say, oh, well, but I don't know how to edit the videos or something. It's like, you can either go hire, a video editor, which that would be, honestly, that's my suggestion. If you got the money, you can find somebody to edit like a talking head video for like $60 to $100 per video, right? Like pretty conservative. And you might even be able to find cheaper than that, but for like a good, reasonable, priced video editor for a talking head YouTube style video, you should pay $60 to $100, which is an investment. Because I mean, you figure, think of how much the ROI is on that money, down the road, years and years later. Compared to like, you can barely buy a single Zillow lead right now, not a Zillow zip code. You can't even get a Zillow lead for between $60 to $100 in most zip codes. So like, just think about that. Right. And so like, that's where it's like, if that's your holdup, but yet you've got money, then video editing should not be your excuse. Like you can pay somebody to do it. Like, and if you don't have money, but you've got time, well, then you can go on YouTube. I've learned everything that I've known about editing videos, and I can edit every single one of my videos if I chose to. It's just now I've, got more money than time, to where it's like, I would rather pay somebody $60 to $100 than to do it myself. But like, you can go figure it out, because there's a lot of YouTube videos that show you how to edit your own videos. And, and talking head style videos are pretty easy to edit, quite honestly. Like, even if you're adding in B-roll and stuff like that, we're not talking about doing some kind of like travel vlog video where you got to like edit to the beat of the music and make it all like crazy. You're just editing a talking head style video, and maybe, chopping up the parts where you screw up, the ums, the ahs, all that stuff.
Yep.
Like, you know how it is. And so, I mean, that's the thing, is like, you hear all these excuses, but really, I mean, honestly, I think it's just mostly it's a commitment issue. Like if somebody's not doing YouTube right now, but they want to, it's because, they're not committed enough to doing it.
That makes total sense. And the last thing I want to cover, because this is a big part of it, I feel like a lot of new agents end up wasting their time doing a lot of things. Even if they're doing things that could be productive, they're not doing them the right way. If you were starting out again, would you recommend anything like getting exclusive buyer relationships, doing consultations before you bring clients out, getting them pre-approved, things like that? All like small mistakes that new agents make that they don't even realize they're doing. But you just kind of busy work that never amounts to anything. Like what would you recommend in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you got to pre-qualify better in the beginning. Like as a new agent, especially, like anytime that you get anybody even remotely interested in, talking about buying a house, you're like, all right, I'm ready to go run across town and go do this and that and this. And like literally, that could take 3-4 hours out of your day. And yes, that might like, you want that business, you're hungry, and that's a good thing, that hunger, but you also have to like balance that with like being smart about your work. And just, like if you jump to any kind of person who wants your attention, number one, you're not positioning yourself properly. Like, I try to position myself with my clients as like, hey, like they know my time's valuable, but I want to give them my time too, right? So like there's a balance. And so like what I always will do with my clients is, especially like, buyer consultation, we do them via Zoom. Like, why am I going to go drive to Starbucks or, go to my office or do anything like that when I could, and most of the time they want to be on Zoom. They don't want to have to come meet with me. If I can say, hey, are you free to jump on a, quick buyer consultation after you get off of work tonight at like 6 o'clock? They're like, absolutely. That saves me time, saves them time, takes 30 minutes, right? I'm already here at my house, so it's easy. And I can pre-qualify them. I can see, and when I say pre-qualify, I don't even just mean like financially, like mortgage wise. I'm talking like that is part of it, but also like, are they reasonable? Like, is their time frame reasonable? Are they able to even buy the type of house that they're hoping they can? Because sometimes people have unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
Sometimes they may have other agents. Sometimes like they may not want to commit to an agent. And so you got to like screen all of this stuff out, because especially when you start to like invest more time in, like whether it's YouTube or whether you are spending money on like Google pay-per-click, and when you eventually start getting opportunities coming to you, it's not a matter of like getting the opportunities. Now it's a matter of like focusing your efforts on the highest and best ones, because you could very easily go out and service a really terrible lead, someone that maybe they're not qualified or whatever. And because you did that, you just missed like 3 leads that were going to be good. You know what I mean? And so it's like, that's where you got to be strategic about it and not just go running around. And so, yeah, so definitely like, buyer consultation via Zoom first. I don't run around until I get a good feel for the person. That doesn't mean that I make them even sign the buyer's rep right away. I will go do like a tour without a buyer's rep signed. If they're ready to sign it right away after I do a Zoom call, I'll send over the paperwork via DocuSign, have them sign it. But if they want to go see a property or go see a tour, like 3 or 4 houses at a time, I'll do that, without having them sign it. But then the next time they want to go see, they have to sign a buyer consultation or buyer representation agreement. And then on the same thing for like a listing appointment, I do all my listing appointments, the first one via Zoom as well. Before I go drive over to somebody's house, I'll do like a pre-listing appointment where, in that case, I'm basically jumping on Zoom with somebody. I'm looking at their comps in front of them. I'll share my screen with my MLS and show them like, hey, these are, what the homes have sold for. I just make sure like, is this seller going to be reasonable? Like, are they asking for 600 and all the comps show 450? Because if that's the case, like, I'm going to say, hey, I don't know that it's going to work. It's not worth, coming out and doing that. But if they're like reasonable, I say, well, hey, cool. Sounds like we're in the ballpark. The next step is I need to come out and actually get my eyes on your property, see all the, unique features about it. I need to kind of like come and engage, the curb appeal, all that type of stuff. And, come out there and give you some pointers and some tips on, staging best practices and things we can do to get the most money for, for your home. Are you okay with that? And they say, absolutely. But at least I've pre-screened that opportunity as well. And I can do those in 30 minutes, here and here and here. So it's like, doing that, getting more efficient with your time is so important in this business, to be able to scale and to be able to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's huge. That's great advice. And now, Kyle, is there anything else you wanted to add to this? I think we covered quite a bit.
No, I think that's the most, as far as that goes, just, thinking smarter, and just trying to really, don't just do things to do them. Like I would always like, especially now, I write everything that I do down. I've got a notepad next to me. Anything that I do, especially if it's something new, I write it down. And then I always try and think like, how can I make this process better? How can I systematize it? How can I outsource it? Like, how can I get somebody else to do it other than myself? In the beginning, maybe you don't have that opportunity to outsource it and pay for somebody or an assistant or something like that. But just getting in the habit of like thinking of things differently and like, not just doing them because you're doing them, but really think like, why am I doing it this way? Is there a better way? Questioning it, asking other agents about it, looking it up on YouTube, seeing how other people are doing it. Getting in the habit of doing that type of thing is really important. And that's why, again, doing less, I think, is so important, because if you're getting to be that detailed about stuff, you can only be that detailed about so many things. When you're trying to do a million things, well, then, yeah, you can never take that much time to like really hone in and perfect your stuff. So that's the key.
That's huge. That is really good advice. All right. Awesome, Kyle. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. And I think the audience will really love it. We have a lot of new agents that are just looking to get their, business off the ground. So guys, if you enjoy this kind of content, go check out Kyle's channel. It is an awesome resource. It's packed with useful information. So definitely go check that out.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.